Dear students, let us have the second segment of diagnostic testing and remedial teaching. In the first segment, we have discussed the concept of diagnostic testing, remedial teaching, the cycle of diagnostic testing and remedial teaching, and the levels of diagnosis. And we have concluded by saying that diagnostic testing and remedial teaching is for good teaching or effective teaching. Now we shall move on to construction of tool. Construction of tool is to be passed through three main phases of test construction of diagnostic test. One is planning for the construction of the diagnostic test. Second is construction of diagnostic test. Third is administration and interpretation of the diagnostic test. The first is planning. Planning of diagnostic test involves the following aspects. We all know that for every action to be implemented in an effective manner, there should be a planning. And during the planning phase, every aspect of the action is to be considered. Here also, the planning stage of diagnostic test start with the identifying the areas of weakness of learning difficulties or the sensing of the weakness of the learners. The teacher should know that, should sense that there is a problem with the learner. How can a teacher come to know this thing? During the classroom teaching, by observing the learners, the teacher may feel that there is problem with some learners. Or by conducting a unit test or some sort of achievement test, if the teacher noticed that there are gaps in the achievement of the learners, he or she can assume that there is some problem with the learners. It is sensing the weakness of the learners or sensing the learning difficulties of the learners. And this sensing is in respect of a unit or an area of study. We have to limit that area into subunit or subtopic for diagnosis in depth. That means isolating a unit or subunit or concept for diagnosis in depth. That means, for example, if you teach the students about identities, you feel that there are problems in connection with the unit identities with some people. But we have to identify which area is more difficult for them or in which subunit, subtopic the learner confronts problems or difficulties. That is the isolating the subtopic or subunit of the main topic. Then third step is content analysis. Content analysis means you have to split the isolated subunit into minute details, and the previous knowledge required for learning that subunit, and each and every teaching points detailed in the subunit. This is content analysis. Then the fourth step is deciding about the nature of the items of the test. The items you want to include in the test has to be decided prior to its construction. It may be multiple choice item, short answer type item, or like that. Then the fifth step is taking decision about necessary administrative measures. These 5 aspects has to be considered while planning a diagnostic test. The second phase is construction of the diagnostic test. That means you have to construct all the items according to the plan. The nature of the content of the subunit is to be considered while constructing the diagnostic test. Then the prerequisites needed for learning the subunit is to be considered while construction. And one more thing, the expected behavior after studying the subunit is also to be considered while constructing a diagnostic test. Then the third step is administration and interpretation of the diagnostic test. This is the most important part of the test construction. In the previous 2 phases, we have planned the test and constructed the items according to the plan. Now we are going to administer the test. As per the administrative norms, we have planned in the planning stage. And interpretation of the diagnostic test. The interpretation of the diagnostic test leads to remedial teaching. And for doing this interpretation process, we have to undergo 2 phases. One is preparation of diagnostic chart and second one is error analysis. Preparation of diagnostic chart means we have to analyze the answers of all the learners by preparing a chart. In that chart, you will mark the right answers and the wrong answers of each learners. For that, you take the answer script of the students one by one and prepare a table in which you marked the right response as tick mark and wrong response as into mark. This is diagnostic chart. And by analyzing this chart, you can identify that which questions are responded wrongly by the learners and which students are wrongly and badly answered the diagnostic test. By this, you can identify the individual difficulties and the group difficulties. If a question is answered by most of the learners wrongly, that means that area needs group remediation, or there is a group difficulty with that particular teaching point. And if a student answers most of the questions badly, that means that student needs individual remediation. There is problem with that student. And after this preparation of diagnostic chart, you have to do the error analysis. Error analysis means you have found out the errors committed by learners, individual wise and group wise. You have to analyze the errors and find out or hypothesize the probable causes for these errors. For that, you have to again prepare a chart depicting the errors committed one by one and the probable causes for these errors. You take the first error and find out the probable causes of committed this error. It is the ability, the capability of the teacher to find out the causes. For that, the teacher has to go back to the teaching learning process and analyze the teaching learning process happened in the classroom and find out the probable causes of these errors. And like this, you take the errors one by one from the diagnostic chart and hypothesize the probable causes of these errors. And after this error analysis, you have to design the remedial teaching. Remedial teaching stands for the teaching carried out to provide remedial measures for helping the students in getting rid of their weaknesses or learning difficulties diagnosed through diagnostic testing. We have identified the learning difficulties and the probable causes at individual level and group level by doing error analysis. Then the next phase is you have to design the individual remediation and grouped remediation for getting rid of these weaknesses or learning difficulties. And you can make use of different strategies for remedial teaching. You can make use of enriched materials, drill work, or mapping supported strategies, or diagram supported strategies, art related strategies, like that. These strategies can be used for group diagnosis, group remediation, and individual remediation also can make use of peer teaching, drill work, practice, and special counseling, these things. And this remediation, after this remedial program, the teacher has to conduct an evaluation test. If the student succeeds in the evaluation test, we can stop the diagnostic process. If the student fails to succeed in the evaluation test, the entire diagnostic testing and remedial cycle has to repeat again. You have to start with the diagnostic testing again and do all the phases in connection with this process, and again conduct the evaluation test. And when the learner succeeds in the evaluation process, you can stop it. The next function of diagnostic testing and remediation is prevention. We know that prevention is better than cure in education, as elsewhere. A program of diagnostic testing should help an imaginative teacher in getting an insight into the type of possible errors that are likely to occur in teaching and their possible causes and the ways of preventing them in future. That means the teacher has diagnosed the probable causes, hypothesized the probable causes of learner difficulties. Then the teacher can prevent this probable causes in the similar learning situations. That is prevention. The teacher can take care in the next teaching learning process to avoid the possible causes and problems with the learners. And thus education diagnosis does not and should not end at remedial measures, but also should become a means for improving instruction modifying curriculum, and also for refining instructional materials and strategies. The real importance is rather than in the prevention of its reappearance under similar conditions. The most important goal of remedial teaching is to prevent the reappearance of these identified causes of learner difficulties in the future conditions or the similar conditions. That is the prevention dimension of diagnostic testing and remedial teaching. Then, what are the uses of diagnostic testing? There are many uses for diagnostic tests. Some of them are find out inadequacies in specific skills. Second one, locate areas in which individual instruction is required. Furnish continuous information in order that learning activities may be most productive of desirable outcome. Then serve as a basis for improving instruction methods in structural materials and learning procedure. And here ends the details of diagnostic testing and remedial teaching. You explore this material, and along with this document, I shall provide the reference notes to you. You explore it also, and the assignment suggested from my part is you prepare a diagnostic test of any topic from your subject and submit to your teacher concerned. Thank you for hearing.